My name is Krysak. I'm 80 years old, and I want to tell you something that I fought against for most of my life. Letting go is not losing. I know that sentence sounds simple, maybe even gentle, but when life forces you to test it, it does not feel gentle at first. It feels cruel. It feels unfair. It feels like being asked to open your hand while your heart is still attached to what is inside it. For years, I believed that if I let go, I would lose something essential. I thought letting go meant I did not care enough. I thought it meant giving up. I thought it meant becoming cold, detached, distant, or weak. So I held on. I held on to people, to memories, to regrets, to pain, to old roles, to old identities, to ideas of how things should have gone. And the tighter I held, the more I suffered. It took me a very long time to see that what I called loyalty was often fear, and what I called strength was often attachment. Only much later did I understand the truth. Letting go was not the end of love. It was the beginning of freedom. I was not born with this understanding. I was born in a small village in northern Thailand, where life taught us to cling to what little we had. Food mattered, family mattered, stability mattered, reputation mattered. You did not let things go easily because there was never much extra to lose. My parents were good people, but they were shaped by hardship. My father held tightly to routine, to order, to control. My mother held tightly to family, to duty, to endurance. I learned from both of them that survival often means gripping hard. So it was natural for me to carry that habit into my heart. If something mattered, I held it. If someone mattered, I held them too. If pain came, I held that as well. I did not know how to do anything else. When I entered monastic life, I thought I was entering a path of release, and in some ways I was. But the habits of the heart do not disappear just because the robe changes. I still held on. I held on to my image of what a monk should be. I held on to the hope that if I practiced correctly, life would become clearer and kinder. I held on to the approval of my teachers. I held on to my progress. I held on to the quiet belief that if I did enough, I would be safe from certain kinds of pain. You see, this is what most people don't realize. Attachment does not only live in material things. It lives in identity. It lives in expectation. It lives in the version of life you think you deserve. It lives in the way you insist that what you love should remain exactly as it is. For many years, I believed that my suffering came from change itself, the ending of things, the loss of people, the movement of time. But that was not the whole truth. Change hurt, yes. Loss hurt, yes. But what tortured me most was my refusal to accept that life moves, that nothing stays, that what comes also goes. I fought that truth in 1,000 quiet ways. I wanted my teachers to stay forever. I wanted my body to remain strong. I wanted certain relationships in the temple never to shift. I wanted peace to feel permanent once it appeared. I wanted the people I loved not to suffer, not to die, not to leave. And because I wanted all of this so badly, life kept breaking my heart open. There was one period in my life that revealed this very clearly. A senior monk who had been close to me for many years became ill. I admired him deeply. He had guided me when I was young. He had seen through my pride, my fear, my confusion, and he had spoken to me with a patience I did not deserve. When his body began to fail, I was more shaken than I wanted anyone to know. I prayed. I sat near him. I tried to be calm. But inside I was bargaining with reality. Not him, not now, not this. I wanted life to make an exception for my love. And when he died, I did not only grieve him. I grieved the collapse of my illusion that what I loved could remain untouched. And here's what I didn't understand then. My grief was not only grief. It was grief tied to resistance. I was not only mourning a human being. I was fighting impermanence. I was saying no to what had already happened. I was clinging to the form of someone I loved, as if love itself depended on that form remaining. That is what made the suffering so sharp. Not just the loss, but my inability to release the demand that things remain as they had been. After his death, I carried pain in a way that looked almost noble from the outside. I spoke respectfully of him. I remembered him often. I continued my responsibilities. But privately, I kept reopening the wound. I replayed old conversations. I imagined what he would say to me now. I felt angry at reality for doing what reality always does. I had turned memory into a shrine I was afraid to leave. I thought staying in pain honored what I had lost. I thought if I loosened my grip on grief, I would betray the love. But that too was attachment wearing a sacred mask. You know what surprised me most? The thing I feared was not really forgetting him. The thing I feared was who I would be without the pain. Pain had become a kind of bond, a proof of meaning, a way to keep him near. And because of that, I could not see that I was turning my own heart into a prison. I was not loving freely. I was holding tightly. I was not remembering with peace. I was clinging with fear. This is where my understanding began to change, not in one dramatic moment, but through many quiet ones, in meditation, in silence, in old age. I began to see that holding on had become my reflex in every part of life, not just with grief, with identity too. I held on to being seen as wise. I held on to being useful. I held on to the image of being a steady monk. I held on to old opinions about myself. I held on to the idea that I was still who I had been 20 years earlier. And every time life changed me, I suffered. Every time age took something, I resisted. Every time a role fell away, I felt threatened. Let me explain. The pain was not only in what changed. The pain was in my insistence that I should still be who I used to be. One evening, many years after my teacher had died, I was sitting alone after sunset. My body was tired, my knees hurt, my breath was uneven. I was thinking about all the things life had already taken from me, or seemed to have taken. People, strength, certainty, youth, roles. And then a thought arose that did not come from fear. It came from clarity. What if letting go is not losing? What if losing is what happens when you refuse to let go? What if freedom begins when you stop trying to hold what is already moving? That question stayed with me. I did not answer it quickly. I lived with it. And slowly something opened. I began to notice that everything I held too tightly caused suffering. Every identity I defended too strongly became a source of fear. Every expectation I refused to release became a source of pain. Every person I loved as if they should never change became a source of anxiety. It was not love that hurt me. It was possession. It was demand. It was attachment to form. What most people don't realize is that letting go does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop trying to imprison love inside your preferred shape. You stop saying, "This must stay like this or I cannot be at peace." You stop making your heart dependent on a frozen version of reality. Letting go is not emotional distance. It is emotional honesty. It is saying yes to the truth that everything moves, and still choosing to love with open hands. This changed the way I understood the Buddha's teachings on attachment. Before I had heard them with my mind. I knew the words. I could explain impermanence. I could speak about non-attachment. But I still lived as if some things should be exempt from change, as if some sorrows should not come, as if some beloved forms should remain. That is not wisdom. That is bargaining. And bargaining with impermanence always ends in exhaustion. I also learned something else. Letting go is not something you do once. It is something you practice again and again, every day, in small ways and large ones. You let go of being right in one conversation. You let go of replaying an old mistake before sleep. You let go of needing someone to understand you in exactly the way you want. You let go of yesterday's image of yourself. You let go of the demand that this moment be different before you can soften. Little by little, the hand opens. Little by little, the heart stops living in contraction. And here's the truth. An open hand can still hold. It just does not imprison. That is the kind of love I know now. The kind that allows. The kind that blesses. The kind that does not demand permanence from a changing world. I still miss people. I still grieve. I still feel tenderness when I remember those who shaped my life. But there is less struggle in it now. Less grasping, less fear, more room, more air, more gratitude. This also changed how I experience aging. When I was younger, I clung to strength, to usefulness, to the role of teacher, to being the one who could help. And aging has a way of taking each of those attachments and placing them in your hands one by one, asking, "Can you release this too? Can you still be at peace if your body slows? Can you still know who you are if your roles change? Can you still love life when it does not mirror your old image back to you? These are not easy questions, but they are sacred ones. At 80 years old, I can tell you this with no need to impress you. The deepest freedom I have known did not come from getting what I wanted. It came from loosening my grip on what I thought I needed. It came from realizing that clinging is a kind of fear, and letting go is a kind of trust. Trust that love is still love, even when form changes. Trust that life can move, and you do not have to collapse with every movement. Trust that peace is not found by controlling reality, but by no longer making war with its nature. If these words touch something in you, then maybe there is something in your life you are gripping too hard right now. Maybe it is a person. Maybe it is a version of yourself. Maybe it is an old wound you think you must keep alive to remain loyal to what happened. Maybe it is a future you are demanding from life. Maybe it is a role you do not know how to release. Whatever it is, I am not asking you to throw it away. I am asking you to look gently at how tightly you are holding it and what that grip is costing your heart. And if these words matter to you, stay close to them. Return to them when the mind says that letting go means you will disappear. It does not. It means you will breathe again. If you want, tell me in the comments what you are afraid to release. Sometimes naming it is the beginning of loosening it. And if you want to keep walking through these truths with me, remain here. Not because I know everything, but because I know what it is to cling until it hurts, and to discover, very late but not too late, that letting go was never losing. It was the first honest step into freedom.